Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Welcome to another episode of Inside The Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast on 97.1 The Freak. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you download and subscribe to it on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to my channel at Kevin Gray Sports, and you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Also, Mavericks fall to the Philadelphia 76ers 120-116 at the American Airlines Center as they lose now 4 of their last 5 games after having won 7 straight. The Mavericks right now 34-27, sitting 8th in the Western Conference. The Mavericks were not able to build momentum off an 11-0 start in the first quarter that saw them fall to Tyrese Maxey and the Philadelphia 76ers as the Mavericks began their 3-game homestand on Sunday as they get ready to welcome in Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers on Tuesday. Pacers losing to the San Antonio Spurs on Sunday. Victor Wembanyama continuing his sensational rookie season for the Spurs as they got a win over the Indiana Pacers. But for the Mavericks, they've got to find a way to get it together because they allowed the Philadelphia 76ers to outscore them 32-11 in the final 9 minutes of that first quarter. And from there on, the Sixers were really able to control the game. Yes, the Mavericks made a late fourth quarter push to try and get themselves into and win the game. But at the same time, they outscored the Sixers 40-30 in that final period. But it was too little, too late by then as the 76ers were able to get the win. And a few things that really stood out in this particular game, because even as you run through the box score and how it went down at the AAC between the Mavericks and the Sixers, yes, Luka Doncic becoming the 4th player in NBA history with 3 straight 30-point triple-doubles in the game on Sunday. He finished with 38 points, 11 rebounds, and 10 assists in the victory. Kyrie Irving had 28 points, with 10 of those coming in the fourth quarter. Luka Doncic scoring 18 of his 38 in the fourth quarter himself. They've got a really nice game from Derrick Jones Jr., who went for 21 points with 5 of 5 from downtown. Really one of the best games that he's had, not just in recent memory, but really all season for the Dallas Mavericks, as we have seen Derrick Jones Jr.'s minutes begin to be reduced because of the trades in acquiring, of course, namely PJ Washington, who's, of course, now in the starting lineup. But for the Mavericks, not a good day in a lot of fronts. And again, as I mentioned, a few things stood out. As you looked at the 76ers coming into the game, this was the number 1 team in the NBA committing the fewest turnovers in the league per game this year, and they held up to that, only committing 9 turnovers in the game themselves. The Sixers are also the number 1 team in the NBA in steals per game every game this year. When you look at what they were doing from a steals aspect, they got another 10 steals in this game. So not only did the Mavericks not be able to take away the basketball against the Sixers, but the Sixers were able to take the ball away from them in this game. The Mavericks had an uncharacteristic 17 turnovers, which led to 25 points off of those turnovers. And I haven't even begun to get to how they played defensively against Tyrese Maxey. Don't worry, I will. But those are some of the initial numbers that stand out in a game where you know that if you're going to get up and down and that play that kind of pace with the Sixers, you're going to find yourself with a lot of live ball turnovers. And the Mavericks uncharacteristically had a ton of those turnovers. Luka Doncic in the game himself, yes, had the monster triple-double, but he also had 7 turnovers in the game. And one of the things that I did not like about the way that the Mavericks approached the game against the Sixers was that you had a size advantage against Philadelphia. Obviously, with no Joel Embiid, you could be able to take advantage of a lack of interior post presence. Yes, they have Mo Bamba in the middle, but he's not going to be a guy that should deter you from getting to the rim at will. When you look at the Mavericks and what they did in this game, only 42 points in the paint. The 76ers had 52 points in the paint, and part of that was Derek Lively in foul trouble throughout the game, Daniel Gafford the same as well. But I did not like the way that the Mavericks went about their game plan and not attacking and getting downhill on Philadelphia. And what the Mavericks attempted to do is that they wanted to go pace for pace and get up and down the floor with the 76ers. And that's not something that you needed to do, especially against a team that wants to play that way. They, based off of their smaller lineup, wanted to get up and down the floor, wanted to push the pace, wanted to get out in transition. And as you saw in this game, yes, the Mavericks were able to get 24 fast break points, but at the same time, the 76ers were able to get 15 fast break points as well. You could have slowed the game down to be able to give yourself more opportunities to be able to punish the 76ers, especially on the interior, but they decided not to do that. And when you don't, and you rely on the three-pointer the way that the Mavericks did, yes, they wound up shooting 16 of 41 from three, but you saw how a lot of those came, especially in the fourth quarter, when you look at what they did and Kyrie Irving was able to do in that fourth quarter. He went 2 of 4 from downtown. Luka Doncic went 2 of 5 from downtown. Derrick Jones Jr. went 2 of 2 from downtown. So you saw that the Mavericks made 6 of those 16 three-pointers in the fourth quarter alone, going 6 of 12 from downtown in the fourth. And again, a couple of those three-pointers were late by Kyrie Irving trying to keep the Mavericks in the game to try and get them closer to trying to win. So when the three wasn't falling early on in the game, you weren't getting downhill. You were playing at the pace of the Philadelphia 76ers. They played the kind of game that they wanted to based on the personnel that they had. Speaking of that personnel, coming up on the other side of this quick break, Tyrese Maxey did an absolute number on the Dallas Mavericks in this particular game and how he was able to break down the Mavericks defensively at will. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast today. Let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Appreciate you hanging out with me through that break here. And thank you to today's sponsor of our podcast and our video, and appreciate Aura for that. And before we went to break, previewing the idea of how Tyrese Maxey was able to get after the Dallas Mavericks all day long in the game between the Sixers and the Mavericks. Tyrese Maxey scoring 17 points in that first quarter. Of course, Maxey, from Garland, Texas, the DFW native, put on a show in front of his family and friends at the AAC. Of course, Maxey, an all-star this year, averaging over 26 points per game, over 6 assists per game as well. Really carried the Sixers, especially in that first half. And you saw the way that the Mavericks were trying to defend him. And one of the things that's concerning going forward, they did not have a point of attack defender that could handle the ball handling and the creativity of Tyrese Maxey, whether he was getting downhill in transition or being able to break guys down off the dribble. Dante Exum, Daniel Gafford, Derrick Jones Jr., among others. Especially in that first half, Maxey was able to take advantage of the Dallas Mavericks' inability to guard him. And more so, you saw things from a drop coverage perspective that really allowed him to be able to take advantage of his floater game, and he really punished the Mavericks inside the paint as well. You saw the gorgeous step-back three-pointer that he had on Dante Exum, putting him on skates, in that game as well in the first half. So the way that the Mavericks got after Maxey defensively did not give you a lot of confidence that they will be able to defend him one-on-one, especially with a point of attack defender to really make things difficult for him and bother him to be able to against the Dallas Mavericks, especially in that first half. Now, as the game went on, especially in that fourth quarter, you saw the Mavericks start to double him a little bit more, get the ball out of his hands, and try to make other guys beat the Dallas Mavericks. Unfortunately, that's exactly what Tobias Harris and Kelly Oubre Jr. did. Kelly Oubre was spectacular, especially in that second half. You look at what he was able to do just specifically in the second half alone. Oubre in the game was able to score 19 points in the second half. And for the game overall, based on what he did, scoring 19 of what was his 21 points in the second half, knocking down timely three-pointers, attacking off the dribble. One of the possessions of the game that comes to mind most is that Tim Hardaway Jr., who has struggled mightily over the last month, to say the least, misses a three-pointer on one end, takes a bad three-pointer on the right wing, and then on the very next possession defensively, Kelly Oubre attacks him off the dribble and finishes with the dunk at the rim. So at times, poor effort defensively for the Mavericks. And one of the things that the Mavericks were able to do during that 7-game win streak is play the kind of defense that gave you confidence that maybe they had turned the corner with not only the execution of the schemes that Jason Kidd and Sean Sweeney have wanted to put together for this team, but the effort and the consistent effort night in and night out on that side of the floor was going to be there going forward for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, now what you've seen in 4 of the last 5 games, and even in the win against the Toronto Raptors, this defense has been putrid, and they have allowed teams to be able to get into the paint at will. You saw what the Boston Celtics did, knocking down a barrage of three-pointers, knocking down 21 three-pointers in that game. In this game against the Philadelphia 76ers, allowing guys to get into the mid-range, whether it be Tobias Harris off the dribble, Tyrese Maxey being able to dribble and penetrate and get into the paint area to be able to finish as well. The Mavericks defensively have not been there in these last 5 games. In fact, coming into the game on Sunday, during their previous 4 games leading up to the Sixers game on Sunday, they were last in the NBA in defensive rating. During their 7-game win streak, they were number 2 in defensive rating. And that is a huge concern now, given who they've got to play here over the next couple of games at home when they welcome in the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. And we know how much Indiana can put points on you in a hurry. You saw the last time these two teams got together, the Mavericks were able to pull it within 4 in the fourth quarter, but then Tyrese Halliburton and the Indiana Pacers went on a 20-4 run, and next thing you know, the lead's back up to 20, and they're running away with it. So the Mavericks have got some serious issues to figure out, especially on the defensive end, because they cannot continue to play this type of defense down the stretch, especially knowing that they still have games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, multiple games against the Golden State Warriors as well. Yes, I know they got beat down by 52 points on Sunday to the Boston Celtics, 140-88, in what was a historic beatdown by the Celtics on the Golden State Warriors. But for the Mavericks, they have got to get back to the kind of defense that they were playing during that 7-game win streak. And you simply did not see that, especially on Sunday. The Mavericks were down by 5 at halftime. And in the third quarter, the Mavericks tried to get themselves back into the game, especially with Luka Doncic being able to try and get them back in the game. But it just simply couldn't happen. The Mavericks were down by 5 to start that third quarter, but the Sixers used a 4-for-4 start from downtown. They got the lead back up to 13. They used an 8-0 run after they were already up by 5 to increase their lead to 13 after forcing a timeout with about 8 minutes left in that third quarter. Mavs started just 27% from the field and 20% from 3 as the Sixers maintained their lead throughout that third quarter. Kelly Oubre, as I mentioned, scoring 19 of his 21 points in the second half, had 8 points in that third quarter as the Sixers shot 63% from 3, 58% overall. Kyrie Irving scored 11 points in that third quarter, but it simply wasn't enough. And there was too many times in the game against Philadelphia where they went cold, and the Mavericks simply couldn't find a way back in it. They did in the fourth quarter, but again, it was too little too late by then. Tobias Harris knocking down big threes down the stretch, including a three-pointer that he hit with about 1:11 left in the fourth quarter to get them back up by 8. And Kelly Oubre then to be able to seal the game, knocking down 1 or 2 free throws to preserve that 120-116 win. The Mavericks were able to get back in it in that second quarter as they were able to use what was a 10-2 run to start off that second quarter. But at the same time, the Sixers were able to maintain momentum throughout the course of the game. And that gets me to this here. When you look at what the Mavericks have done now, losing 4 of their last 5, I want to take it back to their 7-game win streak. And let's break down the anatomy of how the Mavericks were able to get that 7-game win streak, because the question that I have for you as we talk about this with this team and look forward to the final 20-some-odd games that they have left here, as I mentioned, with the Indiana Pacers on Tuesday and then welcoming in the Miami Heat for the final game of the 3-game homestand before they go on the road to take on the Pistons and the Bulls. And then after that, they'll be taking on, of course, the Golden State Warriors back at the AAC, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then the Denver Nuggets. Was that 7-game win streak a mirage based on what this team is and what they're trying to achieve going forward? And is Jason Kidd to blame for it? Let's look at it here. The Mavericks, of course, began that 7-game win streak on Monday, February the 5th, with a 16-point win on the road against the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers at that time still reeling after the loss of Joel Embiid. They've started to play a little bit better as of late, obviously, as evidenced by the win on Sunday against the Mavericks. And then after that, they beat Brooklyn on the road. Brooklyn, not very good, deciding to sell off parts and not feel like they are a team that is going to be competing this year. Yes, Mikal Bridges is there, but at the same time, not a very good Brooklyn Nets team. Then they beat the New York Knicks on the road, a shorthanded New York Knicks team that didn't have Jalen Brunson that night, among others, as the Mavericks were able to get the 14-point win there. Then they had the best win, I believe, of that 7-game win streak, of course, with the P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford additions. They beat down the Oklahoma City Thunder by 35, 146-111 at the AAC. Then, before the All-Star break, they beat down a bad Washington Wizards team. We know how pathetic they are this year. And, of course, the San Antonio Spurs, who are not good. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama having a runaway NBA Rookie of the Year campaign, but at the same time, a Spurs team that obviously isn't good. And then you come out of the All-Star break, you get what I believe is the second best win of that 7-game win streak by beating Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns by 10, and you earn that tiebreaker against the Phoenix Suns, which obviously will loom large as we get deeper into the regular season and as we look at the postseason picture. But after that, games against the Indiana Pacers, you give up a $133 in a loss there. You lose a heartbreaker on the road to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 121-119, thanks to Max Strus going nuclear on you in the fourth quarter with those 15 points, including that 60-foot buzzer beater to win the game. Even in the game against the Toronto Raptors, where you won 136-125, you gave up a $125 to the Toronto Raptors. So defensively, things still not necessarily turned around. You were just able to outscore the Raptors with obviously terrific efforts from Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. And then we all know what happened against the Boston Celtics. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on in the show, the 21 3-pointers, the guys in Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum combining for over 80 points in that game, destroying the Mavericks in every way possible based on the way that they like to play. And then, of course, you lose now to the Philadelphia 76ers, giving up 120 points to them without Joel Embiid. So you see what I'm kind of getting at here. The 7-game win streak that they had outside of obviously the Thunder win and the Suns win were against a bunch of bad teams and a bunch of teams that were injured and were not at full strength and capability to deal with the Dallas Mavericks. So did I maybe get ahead of myself when it came to this team and their 7-game win streak? Maybe, based off the way that they played at 4 out of the last 5 games. Did you get ahead? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you say, Kevin, this is the same team that we've seen all year. They were just able to put it together against some bad teams and some teams that were shorthanded, because you look at what they've done against the good teams over this 11-game stretch. This 12-game stretch, you look at it. Losses to good teams like the Pacers, losses to good teams like the Cavaliers, same against the Boston Celtics, same against the Philadelphia 76ers. And now you're looking at it going forward here, and you say, how can this team be able to put it together against some of the better teams as far as the Western Conference is concerned when you're looking at Golden State, Oklahoma City, and Denver? So the Mavericks clearly have work to do when it goes forward for the rest of the year. And then do we start to look at Jason Kidd? Jason Kidd in this particular stretch has not been good, and there have been concerns, obviously, with the continued play of Tim Hardaway Jr., who, and you look in this game against the Philadelphia 76ers, you go through the box score with THJ, and you look at it, he was 1 of 8 from the field, 0 of 6 from downtown, just 2 points in the game, and obviously was not very good on the defensive end, has struggled over the last month for the Dallas Mavericks. Daniel Gafford in this game only playing 13 minutes in the game. Obviously, Derek Lively, who was in foul trouble, only 18 minutes in this game. Concerns about how this rotation is looking, but more importantly, you're not getting the quality on defense that you're needing, especially for Jason Kidd, who the mantra and the guy that has been a guy that wants to have the defense playing as well as they need to, it just simply hasn't been there. So questions are, can Jason Kidd be the guy to be able to drive this forward? Because the energy and the effort at times was waning in a game where, yes, you're coming off of a difficult 4-game road trip where you lost 3 of those 4 games, but you thought coming home the energy would be there, and it was in those first few minutes of the game. As I mentioned, an 11-0 blitz to start off with, and you felt like they had the energy and the focus and the sense of urgency to be able to move forward. And one of the things that Kidd mentioned in the post-game press conference that concerns me based off of the current roster that they have. Yes, Luka Doncic has been there, getting to a Western Conference final. Kyrie Irving has been there, winning an NBA championship, obviously, with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. But Kidd talking about the younger guys who haven't necessarily been there in positions to be able to feel like they need to have the sense of urgency to move forward here. And as a coach, if you recognize that some of the players on your team haven't been in this position before, Jason Kidd, who's been an NBA champion as a player and as an assistant in this league, he has got to drive that home for them to be able to push the right buttons and be able to get the most out of these guys, to be able to understand and recognize the moment, to be able to step up in games like this where you needed to have a win, because a loss against the Philadelphia 76ers with the talent that the Mavericks have relative to the Sixers have, completely inexcusable given what's on the line right now and what the Mavericks are trying to achieve. This is a team that needs to get out of the play-in. When you're dealing with the Sacramento Kings, the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Lakers, and some of those teams that are going to be in that play-in situation, you do not want to have to go through LeBron James, Stephen Curry, Domantas Sabonis, and the Sacramento Kings. You want to get out of that play-in so that you assure yourself a top 6 seed in the West and not have to worry about possibly getting knocked out by one of these desperate teams trying to get in to the Western Conference playoffs. And for Kidd, it is going to be on him down the stretch, not only figuring out how to ensure that Tim Hardaway Jr. gets back on the track where he has fell off a cliff over the last month, but how does he find a way maybe to get some minutes for a guy like Jaden Hardy, who could use an opportunity to be able to help this team, because the energy that was lacking in this game could have been changed by doing something different to maybe get Tim Hardaway Jr. off the floor, and maybe an infusion of energy like a Jaden Hardy could help them in this game, but he simply did not go to it. And even Kidd talking about it after the game, saying, look, I'm not going to abandon Tim Hardaway Jr. just because he's struggling right now. And while, yes, that is admirable, and I love that as far as a coach supporting his player, this team's not winning games, and they're not playing winning basketball, especially with Tim Hardaway Jr. on the floor. We've seen the peaks and the valleys of this team when they are knocking down threes and when they are defending. They are a really good team. But when they are not defending, they're not knocking down threes at a consistent rate, and Tim Hardaway Jr. is a negative on the floor. You've got to find something different to be able to try and change the energy and the momentum of games, especially like this one, where you should have been able to win this kind of game against the Philadelphia 76ers. So Kidd has got to figure this out based on what his team is, based on the guys that he has with PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, especially getting Gafford back more confident as far as his role is concerned going forward for the rest of the year. Look, Kidd saying prior to the game on Sunday that based on the lineups that they have and what they're trying to do against certain teams, Gafford will see heavy minutes. Lively will see heavy minutes. But at the same time, these small ball lineups where you've seen Maxey at the 5 at times has simply just not worked out based on the way that teams are getting after them as far as not only getting to the paint, but creating opportunities for space to be able to create driving lanes, to be able to take advantage of when guys like Lively and Gafford are in foul trouble like they were on Sunday against the 76ers. So this is on Jason Kidd to really start to figure this out, because if he can't, this team right now cannot defend, and right now they are not turning teams over in the way that bothers them and makes them uncomfortable, because one of the things that I did not like in this game also, Philadelphia felt very comfortable. Even when they were down by 11, they slowly were able to get themselves back into the game. And like I said, at the first quarter, outscoring the Mavericks 32-11 in the final 9 minutes, and really was able to take control of the game from there and then be able to go on to win. So the Mavericks have got a lot of work to do to get themselves back to where they need to be, because that 7-game win streak right now, that feels like a distant memory based off of the way they've played over their last 5 games. Now 1-4 in the last 5 games. And it doesn't get any easier on Tuesday when they welcome in the Indiana Pacers, one of the best offensive teams, the number 1, number 2 consistent offensive rating throughout the course of the year. And they just saw how the Pacers can get after them and put points on the board quickly, as I mentioned, when they went on that run to be able to seal it. Then the Mavericks saw them on the road not that long ago. So the Mavericks fall 120-116 to the Philadelphia 76ers. Tyrese Maxey was absolutely sensational in the game. So was Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris giving you 28 points in the game. Tyrese Maxey had 24. Buddy Hield knocking down some timely shots. I thought Kelly Oubre was really good for them, especially in the second half, attacking the rim, knocking down some timely threes, and really put pressure on the Mavericks by getting to the basket. And the Philadelphia 76ers were able to take advantage of it. They went 29 of 31 from the free throw line. So they were the much more aggressive team, taking it to the basket, finding ways to create dribble penetration. And that was led by Tyrese Maxey, and the lack of a point of attack defender to really deal with the quickness and the speed that Maxey presented to them. And guess what? A guy like Tyrese Halliburton, who obviously is a little bit taller, provides a lot more length at the guard position, can carve you up the same, and also can knock down shots from the outside. So the Mavericks, who will practice on Monday, have got to figure this out going forward, because if they don't, this slide will continue, because they're going to continue to face some really good teams over the next several games here. We already laid it out based on who they're going to be playing. And for Luka Doncic, the 7 turnovers in the game, inexcusable. Yes, had the monster triple-double, but you cannot turn the ball over against a team that you know likes to get into passing lanes, likes to create a lot of deflections, and be able to break up possessions. And you saw how Nick Nurse, he's done this consistently. The head coach of the Sixers I'm talking about has done this consistently throughout Doncic's time in the NBA. These junk defenses, trying to throw multiple defenders at Luka Doncic, showing him different looks to try and create some confusion. And other guys have got to be able to make teams pay when they have the opportunity to do so. And Tim Hardaway Jr., among others, didn't do that. Derrick Jones Jr., who was a really bright spot in this game, going 5 of 5 from downtown, really took advantage of those opportunities. Some of the other guys were not able to do so. PJ Washington in this game, just 1 of 7 from 3, 3 of 10 overall. Obviously, when you look at some of the other numbers, Maxey Kleber 0 of 2 from 3. Tim Hardaway Jr., we mentioned, 0 of 6 from downtown. These other guys have got to make teams pay when they force the ball out of Luka's hands. The Mavericks scored 40 points just too little too late in that fourth quarter. And now here they are, based off of what their record is. They are what we thought they were, based on what they've done over the last 5 games. This team now 34-27, 18-14 at home. 2 more games on this 3-game homestand before they go on the road to take on the Pistons and the Bulls, before they come back and take on the Golden State Warriors at the AAC. So Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and the Mavericks have got to regroup. They've got to find a way to stop the bleeding, because right now they are not playing well. And maybe that 7-game win streak that we saw not that long ago was just a mirage, in this team playing the kind of basketball that maybe we thought they were, even with the additions of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. So a lot for the Mavericks to think about before they get back on the floor on Tuesday night against the Indiana Pacers. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, appreciate you joining me here on the latest episode of Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I am the Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating, write a review for it while you're there. And you can also like and comment on the video if you're watching it on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. And be sure to subscribe to my channel as well. This has been Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'll talk to you later. Peace.